Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, May 27th, 2022, and this is episode 576 of Living Free in Tennessee. And we are doing our Friday Homestead update. It's actually kind of nice to only have 1 week from the last one rather than the 2-week spread like we did last time. And we're doing this live on YouTube and Float and Odyssey. I will only see comments on YouTube today. So if you want to get a question in, you're going to need to hop onto my YouTube channel and put it there. I will work out some kinks in how I see comments on Float and Odyssey moving forward, but the studio had to be taken down and then put back up, and that is what it is. So today we're going to talk about everything happening at once. We've got sheep coming in, we've got rabbits with problems, we've got ducks setting on eggs and more ducks setting on eggs, and everything's growing and the weeds are starting to try to take over my life. And this is that moment that happens. I mean, spring was busy, but this is that moment that happens where I say, screw it. The weeds can do what they do. But this year, I'm not going to do that. We'll talk about that later in the show. If there's anything you all want to hear about on the live stream, yeah, the weeds, Margot, the weeds. If there's anything you want to hear in particular, or you have a question, just put it in all caps, at least the first word or two, and I'll star it and then hit it at the end, unless for some reason it fits with my flow of how we're talking. Before we jump into our topics today, I do want to remind you, Self-Reliance Festival is almost sold out. That's selfreliancefestival.com. We've got, I think, 15 tickets left right now as of this morning. And then I did talk to John Willis. Once those are sold out, we'll probably let people in at the door based on when we see what it looks like to have that many hundreds of people on the campus. So there will be some tickets available at the door, but the price goes up $15 once the online tickets are gone. So if you wanted to come, they are $60 over at selfreliancefestival.com. On Friday the 10th, there will be a pork pop processing workshop. Those tickets are also at selfreliancefestival.com, includes lunch. That's Friday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then Neethi just added a food church workshop that day too. What's going to be happening is we're going to be setting up the event while doing these workshops on Friday, so it'll be kind of fun. The risk is if you come to these pre-workshops and you say, can I help with somebody? We might say yes. Boop, boop, boop. Anyway, I wanted to get that out there before we jumped into the main topics today. If there's something you want to hear about the homestead or anything else, and you want to reach me, you can do that via email, nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com, or go over to livingfreeintennessee.com, click on contact, and those come to me. First segment today is all about the wild forage that's out in there. Although sometimes I tell you what I'm foraging from the garden, but today it's all about the wild forage because I have, since getting back from Texas, been really good about the morning walk with the dogs, and they're super happy about that. I've even got CC's shock collar sitting here on my desk. Don't worry, I don't shock her. I usually just buzz her when she starts running off, and that's how I keep her from running off into the land, because if she runs off, then Chestnut runs off, and then next thing I know, they're 2 miles away at the marina. They've crossed the highway. They risk getting hit by a car. That's scary. So we try to keep her, if CC is contained, everybody is contained. So CC's the key, and just a little buzz when she starts thinking she might want to chase a deer or rabbits enough to get her to go like, no, I don't think I want that. I think I'll just hang out with you on this walk. That's the way that works. Anyway, here's what I have found out in the walk. First of all, the watercress, which I talked about for a long time, it grows in the creek, and watercress is really delicious. It's one of the first greens that starts being harvestable in the spring. And usually by that time, when you're living off of what you've canned, you're like, fresh vegetables sound really tasty right now. Well, they're like, this year, the watercress is up to my my elbow. You know, this thing here on the bottom of my arm. It's super tall. It's got flowers. You can harvest those flowers and they look really pretty on a salad. But what happens to the flavor right now is it gets extra peppery. And so if you don't like radishy peppery flavors and you don't like strong radishy peppery flavors, not eating the watercress, it's what's going to happen is going to bloom and then it's all going to collapse on itself. This is a really good time to feed it to the pigs. Like take a pitchfork out there and feed it to the pigs. You do end up ripping it out by the roots. The way to make sure it comes back anyway is to not take too much out or to cut it at the water surface, and it will just come back. But as the summer gets hotter, the watercress will be gone for the summer. And at this point, we're transitioning into hot greens like Malabar spinach, for example, like sweet potato greens, those sorts of things that like really hot weather. I have Thai water spinach going in the aquaponics system. Just a couple of plants. I threw some seed out there that Jack Spirko gave me, so we'll see if that comes up too. I don't know. And then I was out, and the elderberry plants are about to put on blossoms. They've got like the unopened blossoms on there, and a lot of people like, you can cut them off and sprinkle them over your salad. They're like little lacy white flowers. But some people like to take those and bread them and fry them and serve them like they're called elderberry fritters. I don't do that because I'm a ketogenic eater, and so putting flour on it and breading it and adding sugar is probably not the best choice of a breakfast, but other people like it. So I thought I'd throw that out there. The sassafras leaves are ready for me to harvest. Sassafras leaves can be used as a thickener in stews, and they actually I just boil water, put them in, and it's that sassafras, which is a root beer-like flavor in your tea in the winter. Fodder trees. So my fodder trees are ready to harvest, and I did some pretty aggressive pollarding of them, which means cutting it up at about 6 feet. I did 5 feet because I'm short and I want to be able to get to it, even though I have a pole saw. But I did some aggressive pollarding this year to start training a couple of like 3 primary offshoots on some of my trees that had never been intended to be pollarded. And what happens is they're now putting out all these green shoots because the tree's like, don't kill me. And what that does is it gives me fodder for my animals. And what I'm doing now is thinning that down so that I have 3 primary shoots coming off of each of my aggressively pollarded trees. And then the ones I planted this spring, I mean, it was early spring. It was when it was dormant. It was really winter. I had them in pots from last year from bare root. We transplanted them this winter, and they're now ready for some pollarding and have enough green leaf growth on them that if I pollard them, I'm not going to kill the tree. Because those I was afraid to pollard in the spring because they only had a few leaves and they need photosynthesis to survive, and they weren't as big around as my finger. Now they are, so I'm going to pollard my hybrid poplar and some other stuff. And the funny thing about that, guys, so these plants propagate really easy. So I can do 2 things with this. I can take these cuttings and feed it to the animals, or I can take these cuttings and put them in soil and pots and keep the pots watered and have more trees to plant next year. And we're going to do a combination of both those things. I've also assessed all of the variety of trees on my property and down by the creek that are fodder possible. So we have willow growing naturally. We have box elder growing naturally, which my goats will eat. And we've pollarded some of those too, just to get them trained in that direction. So we have more feed coming off the land, and that means we buy less feed from the feed store this year. It's not going to make a measurable difference, I don't think, except for maybe in rabbit feed, because I can feed the willow to the rabbit all summer long, and there's lots of willow around here. But I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. And with feed prices going up, we're seeing our end point cost of food, of the meat we produce here, also going up. And that also means when we sell the meat, the price goes up. And I know when I buy the cow in December, that's going to be up. I'm planning for about double. So I paid about $3.50 a pound by the time it's all done. I'm expecting it to be a lot more. So if it's less than $7 a pound, I'm going to be stoked. I'm going to be stoked if that happens. So setting my mind now to be happy later, and then figuring out how we're going to manage that, because we go through a cow a year here between feeding it to y'all at events and how much we eat. But you'll hear later in the show how we may be reducing some of our beef consumption. We've got also red clover. So Tactical walked up to me and he showed me this purple flower and he said, "What's this?" And I said, "That's red clover," because the crimson clover is red. Red clover is purple. If you're a wild plant person, you're like, why? I don't know. I guess it's because it's not white. I don't know why it's called red clover, but it's not crimson clover. So he showed that to me, and I said, well, that's red clover. That's something I collect at this time of year, and I dry it, and you want to get it before the sun hits it in the morning. and then you dry it at air temperature and it retains its color, which means it looks nice. And then I use it in tea in the winter for health reasons. And he said, "Oh, okay." He said, "There's some of that growing over. I'm going to start sprinkling seeds around." I said, "Well, there's red clover all over the holler, but the county mower just came through on the road and they probably cut it all down. So now you're not seeing it." But it was funny because that's coming on. It's time to harvest it. It will kind of keep going all summer long, though, so I don't panic. I just get a little bit. And my goal is about a quart jar full of these dried clovers. And I'm also getting chamomile off of the chamomile flower out there in my herb garden. I'm hoping it will last longer than last year because I only got like a thimbleful of chamomile flowers. I have like 5 times as many plants, and I'm like, "You're where I will water you and maybe you will live," but we'll see. You know, so I want to get as much of those more herbal things off the land that I can. So that's what's going on in the forage arena that's any different than what we talked about last week. Next segment is livestock. And this, if you're wondering why in the world is Nicole Sauce streaming an hour and a half early on Friday? Good morning, Corey. Yeah, this is why. Because I said to Tactical this morning when I saw him, I said, "So the sheep are coming this afternoon?" And he said, "No, Dawn said she'll be here at 9:30. And I was like, "Well, that's when I'm live streaming." And he's like, "Okay, whatever." And I thought, you know what? Maybe it'd be a good idea if I'm available during the time when we're moving like 8 or 10, or I don't even know how many sheep we're getting right now, onto the property out of a trailer after they've been on the road for like 5 hours into a pasture area that we're not sure is going to contain them until we see them in the pasture area, like nail biter. Maybe I ought to be there to help, or at least shoot video so I can entertain everybody here with hijinks of us moving sheep. Although I think it'll go fine. We've got electric up for them. So that's why I am an hour and a half early, is I thought, well, I'll just record the podcast because the notes for this were pretty much already done. We're collecting those throughout the week. I know what we're going to talk about. If you ask anything in particular on the live stream, then I try to build that in, but it is what it is. So the sheep are arriving today at 9:30, and then I'm disappearing to an off-grid farm for the rest of Memorial Day weekend and won't have access to internet that I know of. Maybe I'll get some here, maybe I'll get some there, but I don't have like solid streaming access. But it is the annual pork roasting event at Cider Hollow Farm this weekend. So that's happening. We moved, as you know, we moved the pigs. I still haven't put the video together because I need to get Jenny and Nighthawk's video all collected in one place so we can edit because 3 different people or 4 different people were shooting video of the hijinks that were related to moving the pigs. They love it over in that pond. And what's been happening is Tactical or Jenny kind of observes the pigs. And when they see a place where water's falling through the pond, like draining into the rock underneath, they scatter a little corn there, and the pigs will start rooting in that area, and then it kind of packs in the clay. And that process has resulted in some places where the pond was very leaky is now starting to retain water. It's a spring-fed pond, so it just kind of washes through. And that's probably part of why it developed holes, is when we had flood level rains, then I think it's just washed out. So that's starting to happen. And the other thing is that Tactical started pulling dead branches that were in the pond area out so that rooting can happen better. And he started piling them. And he said, this funny thing happened, Nicole. Lady Pig started picking trees out of the ground and piling them next to my pile. I don't know if she's like trying to help or what's going on there. And then he went over there yesterday. He sent me this picture, and it's this pile of brush that's been made, and there's 2 pig butts. So they built themselves a little like pig nest there. So that was kind of cool. I'll get that picture out on social at some point, or maybe Tactical will. It's hilarious. I said, well, this is the question we always ask. Does that mean she's pregnant? Because right before they give birth, like a day before, they start making the nest to give birth in. And if that happens, I'm not sure we want the boar in there with her. But she hasn't looked pregnant. Like, I've been looking at her. She's not like suddenly fat. She doesn't have big old milks hanging down. which it's an obvious thing when that happens. So I don't think she's pregnant. Plus, they were trying to make babies like a week ago. Maybe that took, and then that means we're 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days away. But the nest happened, and it was a really cute picture of just two pig butts and some brush. And that was kind of cool. I don't know. Livestock's always kind of entertaining. They're cute. The chickens keep getting so we have meat birds we're raising for the chicken processing workshop on July 2nd. That's at livingfreeintennessee.com. We've got 3 seats left right now. They are jumping up on top of the feeder and then falling in and getting stuck. So a couple times a day, Tactical has to rescue baby birds that are too stupid to not keep getting stuck in the food. Plus, I mean, for a bird, they're like, there's lots of food here. So we're going to figure out a lid for that. This is a temporary thing, though, because they're growing, right? And we're moving them on grass. And in a little while, we're going to be having, because they're in a chicken tractor, we'll be building sort of a movable fenced area for them so they can have a bigger range, which I think makes the meat taste better. I don't know, but like the chickens we raise, like the thighs are really hearty and tasty, and they taste more chicken than chicken at the store is basically the best way I can describe that. So we've had goat troubles. So here's the goats. You guys have been listening to my podcast for a while. You know, I hate A-Rape here. Haven't heard from you in a while. You know that I have issues with the goats getting out, getting on my roof, blah, blah, blah. Like that hasn't happened a lot lately, but we have 2 goats. I have the friendly goat. I have the skittish goat. The skittish goat has been here for more than a year, and we've been trying to acclimate her to being handled. And this week something happened, and I've been worried about this for a while. We've tried triple. We've tried your way. It has not worked. She just does not want to be touched by humans. And she needed her hooves trimmed. So we had her closed in the barn trying to catch her by her horns so we can just put her on the ground, trim her hooves, and it's done. And then she'll like be really, really, really extra scared of us for the next few weeks. But we kind of like her too. Like she'll eat, if you put your hand way out with the feed, she'll eat straight out of the feed thing. So it's kind of a thing. Well, while we were doing that, she tossed her head because she didn't want to be caught and pushed Tactical's finger into the siding. And there we are on our way to the ER for stitches again. And if the ER had not been available, I would have been doing the stitches. And this one was extra painful for him. So this is the 3rd time Tactical has been to the ER, this room with a cut finger. And it was a bad cut, but he'll survive. He didn't lose the finger. I mean, like it happened. He's like, oh. And I'm like, are we going to the ER? He's like, yep. I'm like, do you still have the finger attached? He said, yep. I'm like, are you sure you need to go to the ER? He's like, yep. So he went to the ER and got stitches. And we had a talk about what this means for the homestead. And this is what can be hard on the homestead is we have an animal we like who is a bit of a danger to us if we try to handle her. And if we don't handle her and she gets sick or hurt, we can't handle her. We can't walk up and give her antibiotics if she's got pneumonia. If she gets cut by something, we can't treat the cut. It's not like my dog who came home completely sliced up and I was able to just tell her to go in the crate and pick up the crate and bring her to the vet because she knew I was helping her. I've got an animal that if it's hurt, we're going to have to shoot it. With that in mind, I think we're going to have to shoot it. I believe that it is time because what that would, like I can have her process quickly or she can get horribly maimed, maybe be in a situation where we have to let her die slowly because she's stuck in something and it's not a place where we can get a shot. And I started thinking about that. And so we have decided, unfortunately, that goat is going to need to be culled because we have tried everything for more than a year. And that's a sad moment on the homestead. When and we like her. So I literally, I have 2 choices. I do it or I ask somebody else to do it who doesn't know the goat. And so I did reach out to some people and say, I will do it if I have to, but are you willing to do this? And they are. And sometimes we admit that we're not really equipped because I process animals all the time, but this one is a little bit different for me. If she was hurt and I had to, I would. But I'm actually really thankful that somebody else is willing to do it who is not emotionally attached to the goat. And then I need to decide if we're adding a second goat, because single goats are not happy goats. And if that happens, I think I'll get a baby so that it's handled from that time, or I'll buy it from my friend who I bought the first goat, the other friendly goat from, who handles her goats, because skittish animals that can hurt you are just not good. That's why you want to be around your pigs when they're babies too. Yeah, sometimes it's hard when you get close to the animals, for sure, and that is what it is. Martinson family says we have a free range buddy. She doesn't like people, and we have to clean her ears, but can't catch her. Yeah, that's the thing. So that's the next thing on my list, are bunny ears. I went to put the female bunnies with the male bunnies, and I looked at the ears, and there were scabs all up in there. And I'm like, crap, I've got a bunny disease. And turns out my rabbits have ear mites. And what we're doing for that right now is I'm putting, and so like the one who had it really bad was the one I saw. It turns out shockingly, all four of them have ear mites because they're all near each other. We're putting olive oil on the ears to smother out the ear mites twice a day. That's fun. And that's, when you're down one hand because you cut your finger, I'm the one doing that because tactical, you need two hands. You need to hold the rabbit and the squeeze. I have a dropper with them. The first time I did it, I put gloves on and like rubbed it around. The rabbits did not like that at all. And when they like kick you with their back feet with the little nails, you get all scratched to crap, by the way, just in case you think rabbits are easy. You got to watch those back legs or the scratchies, or you can just get torn up. And those legs are like, bam, if they hit you. So mine, if you get them by the scruff, they'll calm down. And then I can get the dropper in really easily. If I wanted to rub it around, I would have one person holding the rabbit, and then I can do it. And they actually can't move either if you have them by the scruff. But that's something about handling rabbits that we've really, really learned about. Also, we have new ducks coming soon. So I was trying to figure out, with all the car issues we have, how we're getting to Lisa to pick up some Muscovy ducks that we want to add that to the homestead. And I've been talking to her about this for like 2 months. She's been really gracious about not saying, screw you, I need to get rid of these ducks. And Carrie reached out and said, well, I'm heading your way, so I think I can pick them up for you. So they've made arrangements to transport the Muscovies here. And that means that we will have ducks, and we have to integrate ducks. That's happening, I think, next weekend. So we have to think about how we're integrating the two duck flocks at night without ducks getting beat up. And I have khaki Campbells who are setting on eggs that should be due soon. When I candled the eggs, it's only a few ducks that are going to come out, and there's one egg that's way ahead of the other eggs. So I don't know how we're going to handle that. But Tactical told me yesterday there are now two khaki Campbells sitting next to each other on eggs, and they've divided the eggs among each other, which totally happens with khaki Campbells. And I said, well, did you take the new eggs out? Because what we've done is we've put a mark on all of the eggs. I probably should go down there and candle them again when the ducks get off them. We've put a mark on all the eggs that are being sat on. And then what happens is the other ducks are like shooting eggs under the mothers, and the ones without Sharpie marks on them, we take once a day. And he said, no, I didn't. And I was like, well, we need to keep doing that, because we don't want yet another cycle of behind ducks, because what khaki Campbells will do is just keep setting. They will just keep setting and setting and setting, and it turns into this cascading thing. And so I want one cycle to happen. If the ducks successfully are born, great. Then we have ducks that are being managed by their mom. And the next thing we have to do is keep the ducks from getting eaten by things, which does happen. Like the cats want to go after them. That all of a sudden, when you have baby animals, like the raccoons are there, and the baby animals don't know what to do. So I like to try to keep them kind of contained with their mom while they get a little bit older and can learn how to be ducks. Meanwhile, the mom's like, I want these ducklings in the pond as fast as possible. That's just the way they work. So we've got a lot going, like all of that's happening with livestock at one time. And we have sheep arriving today at 9:30. So we'll be shooting some video of that, unless it's all hands on deck like it was for the pigs. Next segment is grow. This is where we talk about the vegetables we're growing. on the homestead. Grow, 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 grow. Rugula. So remember when I went up in the spring and it was going to rain and I became like a seed fairy and I tossed seeds out of my garden just because I had all these seeds and they were kind of getting old. And I thought, well, if it grows, it grows. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. I did a video on YouTube yesterday's thought of the walk, just sort of showing you what's really up with my garden. And I have these intermittent patches up there of arugula, kale, nasturtium, from that, and some broccoli. The broccoli is actually almost done with itself because it's hot. But it's looking good. What I'm going to do is start thinning out the arugula because that's starting to bolt, and I'm going to choose which kale plants can stay. It's the red Russian kale. They'll get really big, and they actually do pretty well in the hot. So I'm going to give them some space to grow, and then I'm interplanting as much as I can with anything else I can get my hands on up there because there is a fertility problem. Not fertility, a nutrient problem. The nutrients are there, but apparently they're not very accessible to the plants because I let that garden sit for 5 years without doing anything with it, and just whatever weeds happened. The soil isn't what it used to be when I was cultivating that year after year after year. And this year I decided we need to grow a lot more food. So we're going to go back up to this garden. The problem with this garden is it's in zone 2. It's not in zone 1 or zone 0. So my stuff in front of the house totally gets cared for every day. I'm there every day. The garden up the hill, I have to remind myself to go up the hill to deal with that. And that's why you do not want to put your garden on the other side of your property. That's part of why when I was like, I gotta sell some coffee. I gotta make sure I'm doing this business thing right. I just cut that garden out and started spending my money at the farmer's market for extras, and then concentrated on growing some stuff here in zone 1 right outside my front door. Right. Well, so after 5 years, it's not great. And we did everything right. Like we put poop down, we put layers down, we smothered it over the winter so that worms could work on stuff. We did till this year, but only like a little bit. We'd used a light till to break up the sods of grass that had taken over up there. I used a broad fork. We put more poop in it, and we made rows with cardboard in between, which you can see in the video. And then we did mulch over the rows this year. Before, I would usually mulch, like usually you want dirt for germination, and then you mulch when the plants are there to keep the weeds out. But I knew we were going to have so much damn perilla up there that what I was doing is spreading apart the chips and then putting the seeds in like a little patch. And what's happened as a result of that is if it's windy, it covers it up. And I've had some germination problems. But I really have what looks like a nitrogen accessibility problem or a calcium deficiency. I'm not sure which. And I have been spraying the plants with Garrett juice to try to give them a boost. I have been putting rabbit poop around the base of the plants to try to get past this. What that means for my garden is, and some stuff's looking really good. So like the potatoes in the potato row, which I actually cultivated that one row last year, it's year 2. They're looking great. That whole row's looking great. It's the new rows that are not looking great. Basically, what I'm doing is my best to keep up. I will still get vegetables off of those rows, but it won't be as many as I would get had I been cultivating that for the last 5 years and really keeping up on mulching and adding nutrients and, keeping the weeds back. And that's an important lesson, because when our plan is to grow food, if we need to, if we're not also already growing food, then your first year is going to look like my first year. And I know what I'm doing. If you've never grown food, I encourage you to at least get some stuff in pots this year and start growing food if you think you want to try that. Or get a little 3-foot by 5-foot plot or 4-foot by 4-foot raised square garden with some nice soil that you buy from this, and just learn the skill of observing your plants every day and looking for problems. And is that a pest bug or a beneficial bug? And those sorts of things. It really, 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 really helps you. Carrie's asking, you want me to help you redesign the Zone 2 garden to perennials, food forest, lower maintenance needs? No, because we are putting a food forest in where the beehives are. I want your help with that instead. The food forest is going in this fall. I'll probably invite people out for a workshop on that, or an event related to the food forest installation that I'm putting in. But the upper garden is what it is, Carrie. And I think once we get it nice and I make it so we can hang out there, we'll be better at getting our butts up there. Carrie says, groovy. Groovy. I am succession planting where the lettuce was. I had about 20 heads of lettuce, and it is starting to think about bolting. And so we're having big salads every night. We had one last night. We had some people over. And then I went to bed early. But the heads of lettuce are coming out, and then you got to put something behind that or else the weeds will take over. So I've got eggplant going in, I've got tomato going in, I've got peppers going in. I'm thinking about if I want to put sweet potatoes in that area. I'll probably put a few slips and then train them over the side of the aquaponics system. I've got a Tramontino squash that's going in there, and Tramontino squash going in the upper garden. So that's all happening. It's succession planting time. And then about a month from now, I'll start some seedlings inside with the intention of putting them out in late August. Is it a month from 6 weeks from now? It'll be early to mid-July. I will start squash and other plants inside in my grow operation that can then be transplanted outside around September 1st. And we'll see if we get a second wave from that. And that's all part of trying to extend what we get. And what happens here with the squash is the squash vine borers get them and kill them. And so if you have that second wave, you get a second wave. I've never kept a summer squash plant alive through summer into fall. It's always been like the squash vine borers came and everything died. And then I put another round out, and sometimes I get squash off that and sometimes I don't. It depends on if Nicole Sauce keeps up on her mulch and her water, because in August, it usually doesn't rain a lot, except for in the years where it rains a lot. That's what we're dealing with here. It doesn't rain a lot, except for when it rains a lot. We just had like a droughty thing happen that was really hard on germination. But the good news is in the last week and a half, we've had this awesome intermittent rain. And by intermittent rain, I mean like 3 inches fall in an hour, and it takes out the power, and we have to run the generator to keep the chicks alive, which totally happened last week. But we also end up without the soil drying out all the way. And when all of the soil around your garden is wet from rain, you end up having basically the water wicks. So if it's not raining and it's dry outside your garden, you can water your garden, but that water wicks out. And so you have to keep watering your garden, right? If the rain falls, it's all happy. It's not wicking out. It's just being where it needs to be. So when Mother Nature does what Mother Nature has done this week, it's really good for germination. In fact, I reseeded my beans. I haven't gone up to see if they germinated, but it would be 2 days early for them to germinate. And I'm hoping we actually get green beans in the green bean row. Also, because of the fertility issue up there, I put spores up there of fungus to try to get more soil activity. There are earthworms up there. Like, I've looked at the soil. It's not looking terrible. I am battling weeds already. Perilla being the thing. Like, despite everything we've done, perilla is there. Grass is coming in. It's not as bad as it could be, but it's definitely something where if I don't spend half an hour every day, and I didn't spend a half an hour the last 2 days, I'm going to go up there. There's going to be weeds up to my knees already. And I need to pull those out. Because if I don't pull those out, that's what I'm going to have, is just weeds. And so really the goal this year in that upper garden is keep up on the weeds half an hour a day. I can miss 2 or 3 days a week if I have to. It is what it is. But we need to keep up on the weeds as much as possible so that by next year, we've reduced the seed bank of the kinds of things growing up there that we don't want growing up there. But Mother Nature, thank you for all the rain. Now, I've got a question that fits with this topic, so I'm going to throw it up there from Margot. Do you prefer the wicking bed to clay ball or other media in aquaponics? It depends on what I'm trying to do. The system I have right now is my aquaponics system. It has 2 wicking beds, which is a layer of soil, weed barrier, and then lava rock, and water flows through that, and the water wicks up. And I also have a fill and flush bed or ebb and flow bed that's all lava rock. So that would be like the clay balls, except for it's lava rock because lava rock was a cheaper option for us and it worked great. When I am rooting plants, when I am growing out green onions, when I'm transplanting celery from my fridge into the outside bed, that lava rock bed is the best thing. It's way better than the wicking bed for those purposes, and it grows greens pretty well. The fruiting plants do better in the wicking beds. So it depends on what I'm using it for. The new system that's going in, which I was going to talk about in infrastructure, we've got, I think, 4 beds going in initially, and then it'll ultimately expand to 8. There's going to be a ratio of 3-to-1 fill and flush versus wicking beds because I grow a lot of fruiting things. And that'll be in soon. And then I probably will put a raft on one of the 2. We have 2 sumps in the new system that's happening. So it's basically the answer to your question is I like both. And I guess maybe I like wicking beds a little bit more, but I think it's just I grow it like a tomato takes up more space to food ratio. If I'm growing greens in a fill and flush or ebb and flow bed, they can be planted very densely and I'll get a lot off of that, right? If I put a tomato in a wicking bed, it's going to take up like this 12-foot round area, and it's not. So I need more wicking bed to the amount of fruit I get versus if I'm doing greens or grow outs in the ebb and flow bed. So my ratio for me is 1-to-4. The one I have right now is 1-to-3, and then I am using hydroponics for the tomatoes, and the wall of tomatoes is looking really good now. I went through over the weekend and used all the rest of Tactical's paracord and made a trellising system for them to climb, and then trimmed out all, because what I had were like 3 or 4 plants per pot, trimmed out all the plants that I didn't need, put one into root because I needed one more tomato plant just by dunking it in a bucket and let it root out. It's a bucket with some nutrient. And so that's looking great. They're about halfway up my window now. And in another couple weeks, they'll probably be all the way up the window. I've already started getting tomatoes from my inside plant that's just in my kitchen windowsill. And we'll probably have tomatoes in July. It'll probably be July before we have ripe tomatoes. It usually is every year. If I'm lucky, I'll get 1 or 2 in June, but I don't try to push that timeline. Really, my goal with that tomato wall is shade the house and get some food off of it. And if I get 100 pounds of tomatoes later, then that's great. Rodney says would be interested in a aquaponics class within 4 hours of Fort Bragg. I don't know. Is anybody doing one? I could do one when we do our build. We started our build at my workshop, but we ran into a big boulder and that was fun. So it changed the entire design once we did that. Yeah. So that's the grow. Okay. Next segment is holler neighbors / community. There has been a lot of community activity this week. There's actually a community member on MeWe who's been having a tough pregnancy, which if you are in our MeWe group, go read about that. She's been really brave through the whole thing, and I'm impressed. I would say keep her in your thoughts, read what's going on, and drop her a comment because she's at the point where she's in the hospital with basically nothing to do but wait and hope. And the wait and hope time is hard. So maybe give her something to think about. Write her some comments on her blog. That's Pamela over on the MeWe group. Pamela, we're thinking about you here too. And we'll drop you comments from time to time just to hopefully keep you thinking about what happens after you get back out. We've had lots of visitors this week. There's been a lot of people through here. And our holler neighbor solution for that, because everybody's got to eat, is Saturday night. We had a big old potluck. And that meant everybody brought something to contribute. And what happened, it's like the typical thing. A friend of mine from out of town called and said, "What are you doing for dinner tonight?" Because we're going to go do a picnic over at this place near you. And I was like, "Well, we're doing a potluck here." So she was like, "Oh, could I join?" I was like, "Yeah, because potlucks are infinitely scalable. As long as everybody who comes brings something, you can handle more people." So we had a good time. And then that was the night of the power outage. The power outage. I had on my list for the weekend, take out your generator, start your generator, and make sure it's starting in an order in case you need it. And then unfortunately, instead of doing that on Saturday, I did garden stuff. Then the power went out and I was like, well, shoot. And it was in the middle of the night and it was about 2 when the power went out. And then I'm sitting there thinking, I've got baby chicks that are only 2 weeks old. And then I went out and looked at the chicks and they looked okay. I mean, it was 65 degrees outside. It's colder than they want to be. And I'm like, if this stays this way too long, the ones on the outer edge are going to get too cold. And then once they get too cold, they can either get sick or they die. That's what happens. But they're all like sharing body heat. You know, they're in a giant chicken clump. About 3 o'clock, I'm getting really worried. And, you know, we got waves of rain coming through. I'm like, what if they get wet? They were dry. That was the important part. They were dry. Finally, at 3:30, I walk down the hill. I knock on Tactical's door, and I'm like, "Listen, we gotta get the generator out." And so I pulled the generator out while he was getting fuel from where we store fuel. And right as he's pulling the fuel out, the power comes back on, and I'm like, "Never mind!" I'm yelling, and he's like, "I'm gonna bring it up anyway." And then the electricity started bouncing. Just do it like usually the electricity bounces 3 times and goes out because it's set up to do that. No. It was like 6, 7, 8 times. And he's like, your freezers are deep cycling, Nicole. And I was like, oh no. So I went in and I turned off the main power breaker. And then the power went out like 5 minutes later all the way. Like it finally figured it out. And I left my house main off because it was a very weird pulsy thing. And I didn't want to break my air conditioners, break my freezers, break my computers, all of those things. So just having that power main off was really important. And then we got the generator filled up, moved it over by the chicks, turned it on. It started, thank goodness, because, you know, that was going to be the one time the stupid generator didn't start, especially because it was on my maintenance list and I did not do it. And then I needed it. And then we ran that. I think we had it all set up by about, well, I guess there was a 4:20 joke. So at 4:20 in the morning, we got everything all situated. And Tactical's like, oh, it's 4:20. Reefer joke. I was like, yeah, no, I'm going back to bed. I didn't sleep all night. Like I went to bed, woke up at 6 like I usually do, went out and I was like, I wonder if the power's back on. And the only way to know is to turn on the main breaker, power was back on. So then I went to the generator and turned off the gas supply so it would run itself out and not gum up the carburetor. And I unplugged that cable, plugged it back into the electricity, and they had their brooding lamp on and everything was cool. Well, that was great. And then if anybody who saw the live stream Wednesday, you know that I had to run that off a generator too. So we're having lots of electricity problems here. And I'm really happy to have a generator. My generator doesn't run everything, but it runs certain things one at a time. And that works for me. But we're going to end up topping off fuel. And that was all just a big, long explanation of how we work together here as Holler neighbors. The other thing I wanted to mention is that today at 9:30, Dawn Sutton's going to be here with her flock of sheep. She's moving to Tennessee, and in order to do that, needs to liquidate the sheep. We bought them all. We bought them all from her. And when she's ready to have sheep again where she is, I'm pretty sure she'll be buying some sheep from us to start her flock there. Maybe mix them with Dr. Barry's flock. I don't know, because he also has St. Croix sheep. But they are arriving today. And the way we found the sheep is that Dawn was on my show once. The weird thing is I can't find that show. So I think what might have happened is I recorded that and it never got produced, which I'm really sorry about because it's a really good show. But in my head, I'd had this conversation with her because I did. And she talked about raising sheep. And that's kind of what put the seed in my mind for adding sheep here instead of goats, because they're a little less of escape artists than goats are. And I've got a lot of grass. And the less we have to mow, the better we are. And if we can make meat off of the grass, it's not just grass, it's clover, it's pasture. I've been very carefully cultivating all the wild stuff here. So she decided to move. We were at Self-Reliance Festival. She's talking about moving and sheep, and Tactical overheard it. And he was like, oh, and they talked. And then he realized she had sheep for sale. And then he came, hey, there's this lady that has sheep for sale. I was like, you mean Dawn? And he's like, yeah. And so we got to talking with her and we thought, well, that's perfect because it's the kind of sheep we wanted to raise. I was like literally looking for those kind of sheep right here in my area. And I'd seen some nearby for sale, but then didn't jump on it because we weren't ready with fencing. And so then I thought, well, great, we'll know how her sheep are handled, and she can totally then tap back into the same herd that she's been developing for a few years when she's ready for sheep again in her new property. Win-win. This is how the community works. This is what I mean when I talk about underground networking and building a replacement economy, because if our centralized economy is failing, your stability is in the economy you build for yourself. And they call this counter economics, right? Because we're not asking permission, we're just doing. But it's economics. It's all economics. Trade is economics, right? And it's great to be able to support somebody who needs that support and probably could use the money for infrastructure right now, and also be able to know that we can trade with each other again. That adds community stability, that adds personal stability, and it's another chink in the wall, another brick in the wall, I guess would be a better way to say. Chink is the opposite. It's another brick in the wall of having a more stable way of trading with each other. So I'm super excited about that. On that note, Self-Reliance Festival needs volunteers. If you already have a ticket, there's a benefit to becoming a volunteer for 2 2-hour segments that I will tell you about if you decide you want to be a volunteer. I need people who can help with parking at the parking lot, which is offsite, in 2-hour shifts, so you won't miss everything. I need people to help with registration, and we need a couple of extras who can do things like help us keep up with taking the garbage to the dumpster and that sort of thing. So if you're interested in volunteering for Self-Reliance Festival, or if you only want to do 1 2-hour shift, that's fine too. I want you to send me an email, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com. You know how to go to livingfreeintennessee.com and email me there. But we're putting together that list. I'm looking for about 12 people. So if you are somebody who can do this, let me know. I know some of you have already volunteered, and if you've talked to me about volunteering, I already have you on the list. And I just want to put that out here. I'll put it out on social media as well. Next segment is infrastructure. This is where we talk about what we are always freaking building or repairing all the time on the homestead. And did I mention everything's happening at once? We've got sheep coming in. We've got ducks coming in. I've got a weed problem I've got to keep up on for the rest of the time. We're about to start getting so much off the land that I'm going to have to preserve the food that we harvest because we want to have it available in the winter. And yes, fences are breaking. Power is going out. We need more fencing. We need shelters for animals. We've got to figure out how we're going to. Yeah, that's the homestead life. That's the homestead life. I love it. You can see by the look on my face if you're watching the video. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And so the chicken tractor fencing is going to go up soon. The tomato walls are done, except for there's one more wall. The one I'm pointing out my window, right, of my studio here. That's the last south-facing window to get it. The problem is there's a big, heavy bathtub right outside this window that's supposed to go in my bathroom when I redo the floor, when I have the money to buy the tile to redo the floor. And then we got to move a little bit of plumbing because it's a little bit bigger tub than the one that's in there. So what we've decided to do is move the tub and chicken plucker away from the wall, build my wall of tomatoes here, and then put them right in front of the wall. Because I'm not going to have the money for the tile immediately. The dog that's sitting next to me was way too expensive this year for me to have the extra cash for that, for the materials for that. And then materials are doing this wonderful thing where they just keep going up in price, which makes it a something further down the road. So there's like a mason jar started in my kitchen for, we can put another $100 in there. And eventually that will result in finishing the floor in that bathroom. And once that's done, it's like finishing paint I already have, tub goes back in, toilet goes back in, sink is hanging on the wall, so it's fine. I'll build a cabinet to go under the sink because the sink right now is just hanging on the wall, and I was going to build a custom cabinet under that to hide the plumbing and be able to put a few things of like toilet paper in there for people to access if we're out of toilet paper, that sort of thing. So that's up. The IBCs, as I said, are ready for the aquaponics. We have 4 beds ready to go. And then the sheep fencing is mostly done. But Tactical wanted me to let you know, because there's one stretch that's not done that's electric fencing for today when the sheep arrive. He's going to show you how he's going to set a wood post in solid rock, which is why that last one is not done. So you'll be able to see that sometime. He's been hijacking my YouTube channel, and y'all have loved it so much. I was like, just keep hijacking my YouTube channel. It's fine. But I don't watch everything he does, so I don't really know what he's doing on there. So if he does anything totally inappropriate, like, let me know. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, that video I think will come out this week because he's going to be setting that post and then stretching the last fence. We have one pasture, like one fenced area. It's not exactly pasture by our pond, set up for the sheep. That is all hard fencing with electric fencing for them to move into originally, and then we'll be rotating them through. And doing that for, to here and then moving them next door to another pasture. Rodney's asking, is the festival on the 1st and 2nd of October in Virginia? No. Self-Reliance Festival is always in Camden, Tennessee at Special Operations Equipment Campus. It's just, we're doing 3 this year because this has been the year of accelerated skill building for a lot of people in our network. Hello, Humble Mechanic. Thanks for dropping in for a little while. Good to see you. I will answer your text later today. I have a happy answer for you. You'll be needing to check your mailbox too. Anyway, Humble Mechanic is in the building. Okay, next segment is finances. So let me talk to you about sheep. We've got $4,000 into this project now. Yeah, he's super happy. You are going to be happy. $4,000 into the sheep, and we're getting, I think, 8 to 10 sheep today. The reason I don't know the number is that Tactical has been talking to Dawn, and I have not been talking to Dawn about this because this is his pet project. So when we do food raising projects at the Holler Homestead, there's usually a lead on that. So the meat chickens, I'm the lead. The sheep, he's the lead. The pigs, I'm the lead, right? So that's how we kind of work that out. Sometimes Jenny's the lead on something. Sometimes Nighthawk is the lead on something. Nighthawk has been the lead on rabbits, by the way. So we just sort of divide that up so that it's not a big decision-making cluster. And that's why I don't know how many sheep are coming in. But I do know the finances because we share the finances so we can figure out what we should be charging if we sell the meat and what we should charge each other, because there needs to be some sort of value for value exchange. And if the chickens are $25 a chicken or in the chickens, then if you want a chicken, it's $25 if you're a Holler neighbor. If we need to make a profit for the labor, then it's going to be $35, right? That's just the way the finances work. And I'm just making up numbers. I don't know what the chickens are going to cost. I know that feed is double what it was last year, though. And last year I had $12 per bird in the chickens, just in cost of feed and a power and buying the birds. The price of the birds actually were lower this year, though, so by like $2 a bird. So that's helpful. I found a new source for birds, and they showed up despite the fact everybody told me we weren't getting birds. So we've got 4,000 in the sheep. Before we talk about feed, we're not doing a lot of feed. Grain is what you use to make sheep excited to go somewhere else, apparently. So it's like a treat. And I'm hoping that we're adding minerals and stuff, that's where the other expense will be. So expense for the sheep is going to be some electricity for the fence, not bad. It's buying the sheep and keeping the sheep healthy by having them have open access to minerals, shelter, fencing. That's all the stuff that we're putting money into. The cool thing about sheep is that they eat grass and they turn grass into meat. And then they poop where the grass was, which helps regenerate the land. And that's why we're doing this. I said earlier, I'm not sure if we need a whole cow next year. This is why. We ate a lamb in 3 months last year when we were out of beef. So we basically need 4 sheep a year. If we eat totally no beef at all, then we may need 6 sheep a year. That's totally doable with a flock of sheep that you're raising, right? Because when the females get pregnant, they usually have 2. They don't always have 2, and sometimes they have 3. And then you raise those out for 6 months, and then you have meat. That's kind of cool. That timeline is nice because they're pregnant, then they give birth, and then it's 6 months, and you have meat. A cow, you're looking at 18 to 24 months. So as we're able to get more meat from the property here, we will be buying less meat from farmers nearby. Although I anticipate if we can swing it, it's half a cow every year anyway, because sometimes you just want a nice T-bone. And that is what it is, right? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. That is the news from the Holler Homestead. And I think I answered all the questions today as we went. So that is what it is. Mike says, costs of materials for projects are crazy. Yeah, recycling and repurposing anything you can. Um, I hope you enjoyed this. If there are topics you want to hear about that I'm not covering, let me know via email, Nicole at Living Free in Tennessee. And guys, this weekend is your opportunity to move something forward. If you haven't started growing food, set up some potted peppers or tomatoes or lettuce or peas, depending on your climate, whatever's going to work. Make a potato cage, whatever it takes. Start if that's something you've been wanting to do. You've still got time. It's still early enough in the year to get some stuff done. And if you're dreaming about a homestead and haven't moved yet, haven't found the one, don't panic. You'll get there. Just keep your eye on the prize. Take a step every day towards that, and you will eventually get there. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week.